All right, so this problem we're going to solve today has multiple parts, so we're going to dive right in. Again, this is on the chapter on inheritance, and this is a multi-part problem, so there's really not a whole lot of inheritance going on, although there's a couple of concepts to cover. So this problem, they say create something called a job demo. We're going to create a Windows Form C# application called Job Demo. And it will have a job class with 5 properties, including number, name, description, hours, and price. So let's go ahead and create our class for a job. Got my fancy new standing desk this morning, so far so good. Include auto-implemented properties for the number, name, description, but not for the hours or price. So I just kind of jumped ahead just a little bit. So auto-implemented properties for the number, name, and description. So prop, tab, int, job number, enter, prop, tab, string, tab, job name. Now, sometimes you already know it's a job because the class is job, so it's a bit repetitive to say job number. You could just call it number. By convention, job number, you also, if it's going to be the unique identifier, you can also call it the job ID. Okay, it's very conventional to call for each class to have an identifier, and that could be your job number. So I'm just going to go with job ID, but then after that I'm going to drop the job prefix, and I'm just going to go with name and description, prop, string, description. So again, these are auto-implemented properties, auto-implemented. You're going to notice when I have these, I do not create the instance fields, which you could also call the backing fields. Okay, but there are hours and price. Let's just round up to whole hours. So I'll say int, private int, underscore hours. Again, these are our instance fields. And private said price, so we're going to go decimal. And I'm just, for right now, I'm just going to have more traditional properties, right? So the traditional properties have both get and set blocks that you have to fill out, right? So public int hours, right? So this is a get block that returns underscore hours, and a set block that sets the hours equal to the value. So this is kind of shorthand using this arrow syntax to have a more traditional property where these are auto-implemented. These create the instance fields for you. Since I'm creating the hours instance field, I have to both get and set that accordingly. I'll basically do the same thing for price. And if you wanted to kind of break those up on 2 different lines, that looks a little nicer to me. Okay, create a constructor that requires parameters for all the data except for the price. Okay, so we've got 4 pieces of data. So let's go ahead and create our constructor. Remember, a constructor is a method that is public and has the same name as the class. It says it doesn't have one for the price, but we'll have int hours. Then what else is there? There's job ID. There's string name. String description. Okay, so there's our 4 fields, not including the price. We're going to set the hours field equal to the hours parameter. We're going to set the, so again, you're working with the instance fields here, but since these auto-implemented properties create the instance fields for you, to set the job ID, you have to call this property to call the set block. So we'll set the job ID property, job ID, equal to the ID that's passed in. We'll set the name property equal to the name parameter. And we'll set the description property equal to the description parameter. So now we have a constructor that accepts 4 pieces of data. And I'm assuming the price is calculated as the hours times 45 whenever the hours value is set. Okay, this is good. So now, whenever the hours is set, now keep in mind the hours is set in 2 different places. The hours is set in both the constructor and in the set block here. When your set block has more than one statement, you can't use this shorthand. So I'm gonna make a more traditional set block with curly braces because now it has multiple statements. Our price is calculated as 45 times underscore hours. Okay, so anytime you set the hours, you're setting the price. I'm going to do the same thing in the constructor. Oh, multiple statements end in semicolons. And let's also set the price equal to 45 times underscore hours. Now this book is about 5 years old, and so just for fun, I'm going to say inflation in 2023 is running amok. This is double, 90 times hours. There we go. That's probably inflation adjusted pricing.
Got a question.
Yeah.
Instead of using the underscore hours, could you just use hours equals hours, and then when you set it, it would set the price too?
Could you set? Yeah, you could use the hours parameter because they're the same thing at that point.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then you wouldn't have to use the underscore price, right? On the
So, are you saying can you use this hours instead of this hours? The answer is yes, but I'm not sure that that's what.
At the top of that structure.
Right here?
Yeah. Instead of using underscore hours, you would set it using the capital H hours.
Can you set? Yeah. Aha. So you're saying can you do this? Then you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Bingo. Good eye. Yeah. And so why? Because we're using the hours property that sets, that's very good. Good eye. Appreciate. Do not repeat yourself. Keep your code dry. That's what we just did. Good eye. Now, check. Also create the following. So we're going to create, we'll start with the toString method because we've done this before. And you've seen it, public override toString. And this will return an interpolated string that says, whoops, let's put quotes. Okay, so the job, again, formulating a good English sentence, we'll say the name job. Now this is a named property, so we're calling the get block of the named property. So this will say the car wash job has a job ID of job ID and a description of, and just to get it all in one screen, we'll break it across lines. Description of description. Period. it took this many, now we could set the underscore hours. You could use the hours, now in this case, you could use the get block, which returns underscore hours, or you could just directly access it yourself. Which would you think is more efficient? I would think directly accessing the variable is more efficient. So if you can get the hours in multiple ways, just go direct. Work with the instance field. So work with the, it took this many hours and cost underscore price colon C in a currency format. So that's our toString. Now, basically during lecture, I mentioned, hey, all of our classes inherit from object. Object is the parent class of all the other classes, and because of that, you get an equals method for free and a get hash code. The equals method is the one I'm going to do next, because how do you tell if two jobs are equal? Well, there is no like default answer to that. That's business logic, and it's up to the business to say, well, if a job ID is the same, then they're equal, right? We got to look at the job IDs, and only if the job IDs are the same, you know, that kind of thing. And I believe that's what they say. If they have the same job number, right? So that's exactly what this equals method is. So let's write that, public override, and you can kind of see it fills it in. Now, you could see that you're passing in an object. Remember how we said things can be upcasted, right? So what's happening is you'll pass in a job. That job will be upcasted into an object data type, right? Because you understand a little bit about inheritance now, you understand why the data type of this parameter is type of object. Because you could pass in a job, you could pass in anything else. It's actually really flexible to accept an object type. Or we could just, say job 2. However, it doesn't like that. It actually forces you, if you're going to override, to accept an object. So actually, that's not the case. We got to keep it like such. Now remember what this question mark does, right? Does anyone remember what this question mark does?
Does it make it nullable?
It makes it nullable, right? So that's exactly right. So this could in fact be a null object passed in. That's kind of a newer feature in C#, but you can do that with integers, because historically ints couldn't be null. But if you put int question mark, now an int can be null. So the first thing I'm going to do is cast my object obj into a job. And there's different syntaxes for doing this. I'm using the suggestion that IntelliSense gave me. But we're basically going to convert this obj into a job, because we know what that's going to do. We know it is going to be a job that we're going to send in because we're coding it. And then notice it's returning bool. Okay, so I'm going to write an if-else statement. Bool is equals false. I'm going to assume it's false. And I'm going to say if this dot, now what is this dot? There's going to be two jobs. This is essentially the first job. So the syntax when you're calling this, you're going to be like if j1 dot equals j2. So this equals method is called like this. J1 is a job, J2 is a job. J1 translates to this. J1 translates to this. It is the instance of the job that you're determining if it's equal to another job. And you can see J2 is passed into obj. Okay, so this is kind of the syntax for calling this equals method that we're going to demonstrate here in a little bit. But again, it takes in a job, we cast that to a job, we set is equal. Now this is giving you a little null. It's like saying, hey, OBJ could be null, just so you know that, green squiggly. And if it is null, this might crash, this could cause a problem. And you can be like, I know that, go away, green squiggly, and you put a little exclamation point, and that should suppress that. It's not doing that. Oh well. Normally, exclude converting null literal. Okay. Well, if obj not equal to null, so let's test that it's not null first, and then cast it to a job. See if that gets rid of the green squiggly. Okay. It's fine. I'm not worried about the green squiggly. Okay, back to this. If this dot job ID double equals job2 job ID, then we set is equal to true. Now remember, if all you have in an if statement is a single C# statement, you don't need the curlies. And so it's just like one simple if statement. You could also write this differently, but let's just stay with this. So if job ID is job2 job ID, and now we're going to return is equal, which is going to return true or false. So we're going to assume it's false. If the two jobs IDs are equal, we set it equal to true, and return true or false.
Can you remove the question mark?
If I remove the question mark, I don't think it's going to be happy. It's not, again, nullability of type OBJ doesn't match overridden member. Because we're overriding the object equals, it's like pretty strict on the method signature on how to override it. And again, I've done this a whole bunch, and now it's not happy
Oh,
with
is
it.
it because the new variable you made, it can't be null?
I don't know.
Can you do me a favor and scroll up real quick? Just give me
Yeah.
a second. A little more. A little bit more. Right here. Okay.
Good? All right. Yeah, Atticus.
So how does the this keyword select what it represents?
This always refers to the instance object. So you know, if you've got 100 students, this dot refers to the object that it's currently referencing. So the keyword this, again, it just always, like in the case of this scenario, okay, J1 is an object, J2 is a job object. They're both job objects. And so J2 gets sent into OBJ, and then this refers to the instance of the class that you're referring to. The instance of the class that we're referring to is this instance of that job. J1 is an instance of a job. So it's essentially, the answer to that question is because, well, J1 is the instance of the job that's calling the equals method. There could be 1,000 other jobs, but this job is J1. Okay? It is this particular instance of the job that we're looking at the job ID. So we have toString, we have equals, and let's do getHashCode. GetHashCode is a method that returns the job number. As we get into databases, okay, databases have these things called primary keys. It's called normalized databases, and they have primary keys. And primary keys are unique ways to identify entities. And so if you have a whole bunch of jobs, you know, how do you uniquely identify a job? And that is the purpose of get hash code. Get hash code is a method that is meant to uniquely identify a job. In this case, we're going to uniquely identify a job by its job ID. And so basically, it just says return the job ID. Because that is the way that we are going to uniquely identify all of our jobs, all of our job objects. In theory, no two job IDs would be the same. Okay? So if I were actually coding this, maybe you probably have a database that does not allow two of the same job IDs in that column. Okay, so that is the, it says in a job demo app, declare a few job objects, set their values, and demonstrate that all the methods work. And so to kind of flush this out, we can have a big jobs button. And again, you guys, as I'm doing this, these demos, and I don't traditionally get user input, right? I'm just hard coding things, but yet I'm expecting that you, by this point, know how to get user input. Literally, like the first 2 weeks of this class, that's all that we did, is we got user input, we did some math, and then we put it back in the output. So the assumption is at this point is you're comfortable getting user input. Job J1 equals new job. Now keep in mind in the constructor, we have a number of hours, 10 hours. Wash the car, that's going to be a real clean car. No, wait a minute. You see this constructor takes int, string, right? Look at that, right? When you're calling a method, it tells you the data types that it expects. Right? It tells me, okay, for the number of hours is 10, then comes the job ID. I'll just say, and this is an int. I'll say this is job ID of 1. The name is wash car, and the description is using a bucket of soap and a sponge, get to work. Okay. So that is the constructor. Again, that's 10 hours at $90 an hour, $900, right? I think I'd start washing cars if I can get paid $90 an hour to do that. Job J2's new job. This one took, keep the math easy, 20 hours. ID number 2. I'm going to say grade papers. And the description is using your red pen, start drawing those X's. Isn't that what they do? X with a red pen. Okay. There's our 2 job objects. And demonstrate the methods, it says. Label. Properties. Label results. Label result dot text is J1 2-string. Label result dot text equals J2 2-string. Now let's append these jobs, and let's put a line break on our 2-string so that a little formatting going on. So just demonstrating our 2 jobs in a 2-string nature, and let's boot up job demo. Click jobs. Okay. ID of 1, description of using a bucket of soap and sponge, get to work, took 10 hours and costs $900. The grade paper job has a job ID of 2 and a description of using a red pen, start drawing those X's. It took 20 hours, I'm missing the word hours, and cost $1,800. Teachers are going to start getting paid. Let's go back to the job. Took 20 hours. Okay, so there's that. Now we need to demonstrate get hash code and the equals method. So back over here, I'll say if j1 dot equals j2, label result dot text. The jobs are the same job. Else are not the same job. So of course they're looking at the ID, it should say the jobs are not the same job. Of course if I literally pass the same job object in, it should say the jobs are the same job. So our equals method is in fact working, and again now you're knowing how it's getting in there and looking at the job. And finally I'll just say label result dot text plus equals the unique identifier for the first job is j1 dot get hash code, and it's a method call for the second job is j2 get hash code. Don't forget your semicolons. Don't forget your semicolons. And let's put in a line break right there. The unique identifier for the first job is 1, the unique identifier for the second job is 2, not the same job. I guess you can put a line break in these guys. And that is the first part. We're going to do part 2 next. Part 2, using the job class you created, write an application that creates an array of 5 jobs. Prompt the user for values. Do not duplicate numbers. Force the user to re-enter a job when a duplicate number is entered. When 5 jobs have been entered, display them all, plus the total of all prices. Okay, now back to this, what we need to do is have add job, right? So I'll just put this little button over here. I'm just going to delete that button because, or actually I'm just going to change the text to say add job. Button demo is fine. And I'm just going to kind of comment out this because that's the other part. And it says an array. I'm going to create a list of jobs. That's fine. Let's go ahead and get the information from a text box. So what do we need? We need a few text box. For the name, number, description, let's go job ID. Job name. Job description. Finally, job hours. text job hours. Okay, so let's get all those into variables. Int job ID. We're going to try and parse the text job ID dot text out job ID. So let's just put that on the next line. Okay, int job hours, int string job name, string job description. Okay, we need to basically see if this job ID matches any of the job IDs that are currently in the list. Like I'm just, so we're gonna have to basically loop through for each job, I'll call this job list. For each job list dot count, I mean obviously there's no jobs yet, right? So if job ID equals job list sub I, and we know that the ID comes back a couple of ways. We can get the job ID directly, or we can get the hash code. Let's just get the job ID directly. If the job ID, so string message equals, I don't know, string empty, and message equals job ID already exists. So we'll start by assuming it doesn't exist. Just keep it empty. Bool allow insert equals true. We're going to change this to allow insert equal to false. And then, so here, if allow insert is still true, then let's go ahead and do our insert. And I could probably clean this up, but job list dot add a new job calling the hours, job hours, job ID, job name, job description. That looks good. So here, basically, we loop through our jobs if the job ID already exists. Then here's a little message. Job not added. And maybe I put that in a label, like a little red error message. So I'll call this label duplicate, and we'll make the forecolor red. Custom red. So I don't really need a message at this point. I'll just say label duplicate dot text, right? So I don't really need this message. But what I do need to do is every time I click the button, I'm going to clear my label duplicate. Okay, so it starts off with an empty message. If it already exists, it pops up. Job not added. add the job, okay. When 5 objects have been entered, display them all, plus the total of all prices. Okay, so we need a count, we have a count. So if job list dot count is 5, for each job J, for each job in job list, label result dot text plus equals job to string, int price sum equals 0, price sum plus equals job dot price. This is needs to be a decimal. So this loops through, adds up all that, and then at the end we'll say label result dot text is the total price of all jobs is price sum (C). And let's see what breaks. I typed a lot of code. I don't really expect everything to work because, well, I'm a human and I make mistakes too. So let's take a look. So let's just say 1, wash car with a bucket and some soap, get to work. Job hours is 10. Add job. Probably getting a little like thumbs up, job added. That'd be a good thing. But let's just right away check to see that my error message comes up. Yeah, see this? I would expect my error message to come up. So, here's why it didn't come up. It's scope. Each time I'm recreating my job list. I don't want to recreate my job list every time. I want to scope this to the class level so that I create the job list when the form is created, not every time. I'm not recreating that. So let's try this again. Job name, wash car. Add job first time, add job second time, job not added, so that's good. I'm just gonna, even though I call this a duplicate, I am going to here just say label duplicate.text, job added. Just give a success message or an error message, because that's nice. Or even better yet, I'll say job ID job 1 added, job 2 added, job 3 added, or whatever your job ID is. So now I'll say 1, wash car. I'm just going to simplify that because I'm tired of typing it. Job 1 added. Job 2 added. Job ID already exists. Job not added. Job 3 added. Job 4 added. Job ID already exists. Job not added. Job 5. 5. Okay. Total price of all jobs is somewhere wiped it out. I forgot to do plus equals. Here plus equals. Forgot a plus equals. 1 wash car 1 Use soap. 10. 2, 20, 3, 30, 4, 40, 5, 50, 9, 18, 27, 36, and 45. Add it all together. Sure, that looks good. Math looks good. Should double check my math. Job 5 added. Prints it all out. That is 3B. Hopefully you guys found some of that helpful. I will put that out on YouTube. If you want to code along, you can do so. Questions? Good stuff? Not bad?